Keith Myers here again. I wanted to do another knife review for you. My wonderful wife added to my knife collection this Christmas, and I wanted to show it off a bit. I wanted to start it this way just so you can see the scale of this thing. This is a big ass knife. This borders on what I would consider a short sword. This is URSA International's reproduction of the Musso Bowie. He did a very exacting reproduction measurement-wise, construction-wise. This thing is a superb knife. Kind of close comparison is the Natchez Bowie. And you can see it's even bigger than the Natchez Bowie. Massive knife. Let me tell you a little bit about the Musso Bowie first, and then we'll go inside and I'll give you a closer look. But the Musso Bowie. Joe Musso is a graphic artist that works in Hollywood, and he's also a Bowie knife enthusiast and collector. And in 1970 he bought a knife from an antique dealer who had found it wrapped in oilcloth in the drawer of a piece of antique furniture. Musso buys this knife from him, kind of sticks it away, doesn't think much about it, till almost 10 years later when he's cleaning up a bunch of gun parts. He decides to clean up this knife, and as he's cleaning up the brass, he notes that there's the initials JB carved into the brass guard. So that got him curious. JB, James Bowie. He sent the thing off to a lab for testing, and it came back as being dated to the early 1800s, showing that it was an historical knife. Now, as time has gone on, the Musso Bowie is not the only knife of this dramatic design. There's been at least 3 others. There was a knife called the William Sweet Bowie, which disappeared into a collector's stash somewhere in the 60s and hasn't re-emerged, but we do have a photo of it. There was a knife called the Jesse Robinson knife, which was said to have been a gift from Jim Bowie to one of the men that was a volunteer under him at several battles, named Jesse Robinson. And then there was a knife that's also almost identical called the Colonel Neal knife. Colonel Neal had been in charge of the troops in the San Antonio area and got called away just before the Battle of the Alamo, had assigned Colonel Travis as his second in command in charge of the Alamo, and then evidently Colonel Travis was a real asshole, and the men voted him out of command and put Jim Bowie in command. So Jim Bowie became second in command, but obviously he'd known Colonel Neal and that was a friend, and supposedly he gave him a knife that looked just like this. So here we have at least 4 knives of this similar design, and this is significant because this dramatic design, of course, has become in a lot of people's mind the quintessential Bowie knife. You know, this huge knife with this exaggerated clip point, the brass back, the whole bit. So I wrote an essay kind of summarizing all this, a little article. So if you go to my Facebook page, Bowie Knife Connection, you can find what I wrote, what I could research about the Musso Bowie and the knives that are related to it. So go to my Facebook page, look for that. It gives a nice good summary of what is known about this knife. Okay, just design-wise, this thing is more than 13 inches long and weighs more than 2 pounds. What's distinctive is this brass back, which is what's made it controversial, because you look at this, there's not that many knives historically that had this brass back on it. Okay, so what was the purpose? Some people have theorized that that brass back was for parrying, and that because brass was a softer material, a blade would eat into it, bite into it, and be less likely to slide down towards the hand. Well, you've got a guard. That's what the guard's for. So, I don't know. Others have said that it was meant to help dissipate force or the shock. If you're in a battle and you're facing a soldier with a saber and you're parrying a bigger, heavier weapon like a saber, that this helps dissipate the force and the shock. I'm skeptical of that idea too. Probably the best idea in my mind is it looked cool, right? A maker probably put that on there to kind of produce a more dramatic effect and attract attention to his wares and attract business. You know, it's kind of the modern day equivalent of putting pointless spikes on cross guards and on D guards of knives to make them look cool. You know, just a sales gimmick. That's my theory, because there's really no workable reason to put a brass guard on a Bowie knife. I used to think that it was possible it was meant as a trapping guard, so if a knife came lodged in here, it would stick to the brass and be less likely, and you could trap, kind of like the Part Moore Bowie. But if you were going to do that, you would make this a lot more pronounced to really be able to trap a blade. So I kind of doubt my own theory in that regard. And probably the best explanation, it looked cool. But again, this is a big knife compared to the Natchez Bowie. I'm not reviewing the Natchez Bowie simply because so many people have already reviewed this knife on YouTube. But let me say is, I really like this knife. It's a little lighter than the Musso Bowie, and it moves better in the hand. And this is about as big a knife as I would want to use and carry on a regular basis, right? This would be the max for me, because this just seems like a monster in comparison, right? This is a knife so big, it's not something you're going to carry put it in a sheath and carry around all day, because it is so big and heavy. And different makers back in the day would make oversized large knives to attract people's attention as, again, a selling point for what they could do, and not necessarily meant as a actual working knife. So it would make sense if Bowie had a set of these and he gave them as gifts, as presentation knives to some of his friends. But anyway, this is the Musso Bowie, and now we're going to go inside and I'll give you a closer look. Okay, here's your closer look. This knife is from a company called URSA International. It's made by a man named Gulzar Ahmed in Pakistan. Now, don't be fooled, made in Pakistan, but this is a high quality knife. It's made from 5160 spring steel, hand forged, has a black micarta handle. He also does this blade in Damascus. You can see it's got the brass backstrap and the brass crossguard. Overall length is over 19 inches. The blade itself is just over 13 inches. The handle is 5.5 inches. It's over 2.5 inches wide. If you look at this, the thickness of the blade is about 1/4 inch, right? It weighs over 2.5 pounds. This 5160 spring steel has a Rockwell hardness rating of 56 to 58. This is one big knife, and it's very well made. You can tell he did a great job attaching the brass back strap. He includes a leather bolster here to make sure everything stays nice and tight. The work on the guard is very precise. It's got that 6-pointed star just like on the original Musso Bowie. You can tell that clip point is very, very nicely done, and it is sharp. It's sharpened clip point. The knife itself is very sharp. It's got a nice black micarta handle with a full tang construction. This is one solid, nice heavy knife. And I'm going to put it beside Cold Steel's Natchez Bowie again, just because I'm sure a lot of you have seen the Natchez Bowie, so you can again get an idea of the scale. That Natchez Bowie is a big knife, but this is an even bigger knife. It's huge. Came with a leather sheath that's also very nicely done. Big leather sheath, double stitched with a snap. Now, I don't know about you, but it's not like I'm ever going to carry this thing around in a sheath on my hip. I mean, this thing is huge. It would hang clear down to your knee with that strap. So this is really not meant to be in a carrying around knife, right? This is a big knife. Now, the surprising part, Mr. Ahmed has his own website, but it seems like he does a lot of his marketing on eBay, and he'll put it up for bid. I gave $180 for this knife. That's hard to believe. Some of them have sold for close to $300, and it's worth every bit of $300. So I got very lucky finding it for $180. He shipped it by DHL from Pakistan, and I had it within 10 days. So that's hard to beat. And again, the quality of this is outstanding. It'd be worth every bit of $300. Again, that's and Mr. Ahmed used the measurements and all and pictures and all from the original Musso Bowie, and this is a pretty exact reproduction of that knife. Very well worth the investment for any collector. Very nice knife. Highly recommended. All right, that's it for now.